Okay.
Welcome, Jenny. And
Great.
we are talking about healthy relationships. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you guys, all of you, for coming on this Friday afternoon. Um, my name is Jenny Johnston, and this is the fifth soft skill presentation that I've done. And hopefully you've been to some of the other ones, but if you haven't, they are almost all available on YouTube. And the one that didn't get recorded, I do have slides for. So those will be linked in this presentation as well. So I love to teach about soft skills. And so some of you might have come to my other ones, but I really feel like today's presentation on healthy relationships is incredibly important. All of them are skills that I think are pretty lacking in our society today. So if you figure out how to hone these skills, you're going to be a valuable commodity to other people. So today we're going over healthy relationships. In my experience, most people do not realize how the state of their relationships affects them in both their in a positive way in their life and in negative ways, depending on the relationship, and also long term. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more today because I think people don't realize this. Relationships are far more important than you might realize. And some of you might want to be taking notes, and you might be required to take notes. I'm not sure if you are. But if you don't want to take notes, I have a resource document that has everything in here, links to slides, links to presentations, links to videos, a whole workbook on healthy relationships if you would like to print that out. So please don't feel like you have to take notes, especially if that distracts you from just being able to pay attention. So let's see. So healthy relationships matter. Why is this so important? You might want to know. So often these skills can seem like extras, like they don't really matter right now. Maybe when you get older, they'll matter. But creating healthy relationships should matter to you a lot more than it does right now. But you might not realize it. So I wanted to explain, first of all, that relationships have a huge effect on your life, almost more than every other aspect combined. Mental health, physical health, diet, exercise. You might wonder how I could say something so drastic. And I just want to tell you, I always am looking at research. And the longest research study that's ever been done was out of Harvard, and it was on happiness. And the results that they got were so much more than they ever had anticipated. It's been going on for over 85 years. It started in 1938 with teen boys from all backgrounds living in Boston. Harvard students, all the way to the kids in the poorest areas of the cities. They started with something like 790 people. It was almost 800 people. And it went down. I think now that I think there's like 50 still living that are in the study, but the studies increased to 2,000 of their offspring and their wives and everyone. It is the hugest, most longest study that's ever been done. So what did they find? Individuals with strong, healthy relationships live longer, they're happier, and they're healthier. The conclusion is pretty staggering because relationships had more importance than genetics, smoking, diet, exercise, obesity, all of those things. Relationships were more important to health, long-term health, and longevity. If you're interested in learning more about this, this is the guy's TED Talk on it. So there will be a link to that and you can watch it. Because when you first hear this, if you haven't, you might find that staggering because our diet is so important. It's important not to smoke. It's important to be a healthy weight, but the relationships that you have a bigger impact on your long-term health and longevity. These are, I think, links to the workbook I told you guys I had for you. There's a 15-page document that has worksheets on all different types of relationships. So you guys can access that. I'll put it in the chat before we go because I want you guys to have it right when we're done. So if you're motivated to get going. Oh wow, the light just went out in here, but I think You can kind of still see me. Okay.
You're good.
I want you to think today about there's a lot of different relationships in life. Okay. We have to have a wide variety of relationships. So I don't know about you guys, but I build relationships with the cashier I always see at the grocery store and the barista that works at the coffee shop, and even your mailman. These are relationships that are called acquaintances. And what we learned from COVID was that those acquaintance relationships are very important, that we have these small little relationships with people we see throughout our day. Those relationships matter. But the relationships I want to talk to you about today are these four that I'm going to go over. So I want you to continue to treat those people that you see on a daily basis with kindness and caring. They still matter. But these four relationships, these are the ones I want you to keep at the forefront of your mind as we go through the things today. Yourself. If you've been to any of my presentations, you know I repeat over and over, your relationship with yourself is the most important. Why? Because you spend the rest of your life with yourself and you have no choice. So that is our number one important one. Family. We spend so much time with our family, and depending on your family situation, this is a huge role in our life. And whether we like it or not, sometimes it's really rough and we got to do the best we can. Sometimes it's amazing. Everyone has a different family dynamic, but keep that in mind as we go through today's stuff. Your friends. In your teen years, this plays a humongous role. And as you shift through the years and you get a job and you get married or you go to college or you have kids, those friend groups are going to shift and change, but they are still going to stay very important. And then a romantic relationship. Oh, it looks like I have a typo. It's the most significant relationship that's going to shape so much of your adult life. And if there's one thing I could tell you today, please choose wisely when you choose who you're spending the rest of your life with, who you're going to bring babies into this world with. That relationship is going to have tremendous effects on your life. So, given the importance of relationships, it'd be nice if we had a recipe for establishing good, healthy relationships. And I decided that three things are really pretty vital. So boundaries, we're going to talk in depth about boundaries today. That is incredibly important for relationships. Respect, two-way respect in those relationships matters. You can't be respectful to someone else and they're not respectful back to you and expect a healthy relationship. It needs to be both ways. And we'll talk about that some. And then communication is incredibly vital. And that's the one I already did a talk on, and I'm not really going to go over much with that today, but I will give you some other resources just as reminders. So let's see. Something that I also wanted to share was that all of these sessions on the soft skills, they're on the decline. Fewer and fewer young adults know how to be respectful and speak kindly and go out of their way to be helpful. So when you display these skills, I guarantee that everybody around you is going to feel like they won the lottery. It doesn't take much to stand out as a genuinely kind person in this world. So go out of your way to be one of those people, because I promise you it'll get you far. Because it's so easy to make other people, happy and feel seen and heard. And not a lot of people do that. So you could be that person. So the first and most important skill that we can develop is boundaries. So what exactly are boundaries? I love this. Oh, I love this definition. And it's blocked on my screen. Okay, what's okay and what is not okay for us? That's a boundary. Oops, my clicker is going bonkers. Okay, there we go. So it's important to understand that these are very personalized. So your boundaries can be very different from your best friend's boundaries, but that doesn't make either of you right or wrong. Your parents might have boundaries that you don't like, but they are absolutely entitled to those boundaries. And you, just as equally, should be respected for your own boundaries, as long as they're in line with your family values. So unfortunately, when you live under your parents' roof and you're their responsibility, you don't have much say in what those family rules are, but you do need to respect them. After today, I'm hoping that you'll have a better understanding of what you can and can't control, and use this to your benefit as you mature from a teenager living with your mom and dad into a young adult who gets to make decisions on your own. So this takes practice and patience, but it's another soft skill that very few people have. Brené Brown is one of my favorite motivational speakers, and I wanted to use this video today to show you guys about boundaries. And I have lost, I can't see anybody, so let me see. Maybe just somebody can.
You're doing good. Yep, we see it, and as soon
Okay.
as you say play, you should be able to.
Okay, so let me know if it doesn't play.
Yes, yes.
One of the most shocking findings of my work was the idea that the most compassionate people I have interviewed over the last 13 years were also the absolutely most boundaried. Because
most boundary.
so I'll give you a great definition of the definition of boundary that I use in the book. Boundary is simply what's okay and what's not okay. What I think we do is we don't set boundaries. We let people do things that are not okay or get away with behaviors that are not okay. Then we're just resentful and hateful. Me, I'd rather be loving and generous and very straightforward with what's okay and what's not okay. And I did not, that I learned from the research. I was the exact opposite. I assumed for the first 35 years of my life that people were sucking on purpose just to piss me off. That's what I assumed. Whether it was someone who worked for me or it was someone family member who was constantly I was always critical and judgy. And I was like, why are they choosing these things? Why are they making their choices? They should know better. And then when this thing came up from my therapist, what if people are doing the best they can? I thought, my husband had the most beautiful answer to that question. He said, I'll never know whether people are doing the best they can or not. But when I assume people are, it makes my life better. So now I think I am not as sweet as I used to be, but I'm far more loving.
It's not just some technique so that you can do that. That's really a way of being to nurture that soil of wholeheartedness.
Yeah. Generosity, to assume the best about people, is almost an inherently selfish act, because the life you change first is your own.
Love yourself.
Yeah. And so my question is big, B-I-G. What boundaries need to be in place for me to stay in my integrity and make the most generous assumptions about you? But generosity can't exist without boundaries, and we are not comfortable setting boundaries because we care more about what people will think, and we don't want to disappoint anyone. We want everyone to like us, and boundaries are not easy. But I think they're the key to self-love, and I think they're the key to treating others with love and kindness. Sustaining. Nothing is sustainable without boundaries. I think compassion and empathy are different things. And again, I'm relying on my data for this. I think compassion is a deeply held belief that we're inextricably connected to each other by something rooted in love and goodness. I call that God. Not everybody calls that God. My dad would call it fishing. Fishing?
Is it fishing?
No, there's no G in fishing. But I think compassion is a deeply held belief. I think empathy is the skill set to bring compassion alive. So empathy is something we can teach. I mean, it's something we've taught our kids since they were very little. It's about how to communicate that deep love for people in a way so that people don't know they're not alone. I think there's a lot of new interesting information out there about empathy not being a good thing, about that, there's an argument that says, if Travis is in struggle and I practice empathy with you, I'm taking on your darkness, and it leads to burnout, and but empathy is not feeling for somebody. It's feeling with them. It's touching a place in me that knows where you've been, so I can look at you and say, me too, brother. You're not alone in this. And I find empathy to be infinite. I think it gives back tenfold what you put out.
It's sustaining. If you've done the work and you have your boundaries, I mean, you could tread that water forever and never get tired.
Okay, so empathy. I'm quoting Travis here, empathy. If you've done your work and set your boundaries, you can tread that water forever. Amen. It's not finite, and it keeps giving back to us. And so this idea that, but here we go back to where we started this conversation. Empathy minus boundaries is not empathy. Compassion minus boundaries is not genuine. Vulnerability without boundaries is not vulnerability. So you see that there's a huge riff here, which is boundaries are freaking important.
Right.
And they're not fake walls. They're not separation. Boundaries are not division. They're respect. There's here's what's okay for me and here's what's not.
Okay. So, you can see where boundaries and respect come together, and that's why I think they form kind of like the strong foundation for relationships. So what we just watched is easy to listen to, but it's really hard to implement. You have to practice. It doesn't mean it's impossible, but it just takes time and effort, like everything else that's worth doing. It takes time and effort. So I suggest you could possibly bookmark this video and watch it over and over until you can practice creating and enforcing your own boundaries and understanding why it is so important as well. So boundaries equaling respect is something I want you to take away from this. When you have no boundaries, what typically happens is it creates resentment. So just like she said in the very beginning of it, when you don't have boundaries, that's when you get frustrated with people and angry with people because they're doing things you don't want them to do. But think to yourself, am I expecting someone to read my mind right now? Because nobody can read minds. If we don't say what we want or what we need, nobody else is going to know. So it's important to remember that. It is also really important that it is your job to align your boundaries with your values and enforce them. So in the workbook that I have for you guys, I'm pretty sure there's something on values and figuring out what your values are. But it's also no one else's job to make sure you keep your boundaries. So if you have a boundary that, say, you want to not answer your phone during dinner, so you want to be respectful to the people you're having your dinner with, and then the phone rings and you answer it and you get angry at whoever called, that wasn't their fault. You had a boundary you didn't follow through on. So boundaries are very important and also difficult to enforce. But with practice, it gets easier. And then the other thing I like that she talked about is compassion versus empathy. And this right here is a link to the empathy Friday focus, if you want to go back and watch that one. So compassion is that belief we're all connected, we all deserve love. Empathy is a skill. It's something you learn. If you're bad at it, you can get better, just like anything. Like no one speaks Spanish on their first day of Spanish. They have to put time and effort in to learn that language. Empathy is a language that you learn between people. It's an interpersonal language, and it's definitely something you can improve on. And then lastly, the idea, her big idea, the BIG, what boundaries do you need to keep your integrity while maintaining generous assumptions that everyone is doing the very best they can? And I know it's hard. You know, when I was a teenager, I don't know if I would have understood this, but I don't know that it was really taught to me either. But even people who are really, really struggling in life, they are doing the best they can. If we assume that everyone is doing the very best that they can, it does make our lives simpler. And then I had opened all these things up because I wanted to show you guys, but I feel like going between the slides, I feel like it's going to get messed up. So this is a resource on how to set your boundaries. This is a resource on how to say no, because it's really hard to say no, but this resource could help you with that. And then this last one is using radical acceptance, which, you know, there's very few things we can control outside of ourselves. So what do we do in those situations where we're sad or upset or frustrated and we want to do something, but we can't? that's where we pull in radical acceptance. And this has some things you can say to yourself and some tips. And I'm going to use this section to go into our second topic, which is respect. And this is respect for yourself, making sure you're getting respect from other people, that we set a boundary that with friends, family, relationships, we will not be treated certain ways. Or we will treat people a certain way and expect to be retreated that way in return. So let me see what I have here. Okay. So if you've never heard of Mel Robbins, I want you to get ready to meet the best life coach you'd ever have. A lot of her material is free. She has a podcast, a YouTube channel, many books. You can follow her on Instagram for like uplifting, encouraging things to help you change your life if there's things you want to change. She holds nothing back. She uses an excessive amount of foul language, just as a heads up. And she can be a bit harsh, but sometimes this is what we need, is someone who tells it like it is and doesn't sugarcoat things. So I do have clips to show you, and I have made sure that they're okay. She watches her language in them. So I hope you're ready for her. So this is Mel Robbins. She is just a powerhouse of knowledge and wisdom, and I really want to share this idea with you guys. The number one tip for respecting others while remaining in control of what you can control are two strong statements I want you to learn to tell yourself. So the first of them is let them. So I'm going to have her explain it. And actually, I think, okay.
So I've been using this thing called the let them theory. I love this. I want you to try it. Here's how it works. The next time you feel left out, your friends all go out to brunch together and they don't invite you. Let them. Or maybe the person you're dating doesn't want a commitment. Let them. Or perhaps your spouse does not want to do the 5K with you. Let them. Your company is laying people off. Let them. You spend so much time and energy trying to control other people and getting emotionally worked up about things that are beyond your control. You can tap into peace and true control if you let them be themselves. And here's the other thing. If you let them, people will then reveal who they truly are. And when they reveal who they truly are to you, you now know what you can choose next that's right for you. So let them. See, there's a clock.
Okay, so just to kind of briefly go over what she said there, because it's a pretty big idea. When people do things that irritate you, or you're feeling irritated or frustrated, instead of creating conflict, if you learn to just let them and let go, you can learn to be in much more control of yourself, because we can't control other people. And then what I especially like about what she says is that you learn a lot about them once you do that, and then you can make a decision. Is this a person I want to keep in my life? Do I feel better when I'm around this person? Do I leave this person feeling happier than I was before? These are important questions to ask yourself about the people you spend your time with, because I can guarantee you, if you look at the people you spend the most time with, you're going to end up like them. So if you look around and think, gosh, I need to get a new group of friends, give yourself some time to think about that, because that does play a significant role in your life. Okay, and then this right down here is the link to the book, the Let Them Theory book that she wrote, which I think is another great resource. And I'm just going to stay in the screen and go to the second one. So in order for the let them theory to have the most powerful effect, you have to learn the second part of it, which is let me. And this is where it comes into teaching you how this gives you power in your life, and more control over how you feel. So this isn't easy, but this is also really powerful. And she's just going to read a section out of the book that I want to play for you guys. And in it, it's a lot of family that she talks a lot about family, but I want you to think about the 4 relationships I talked about in the beginning: yourself, your friends, your family, and any romantic relationship you might get into.
Ticking in the background about time is that I align my actions and my time when it comes to my family. And the let them theory truly helped me make changes while I still had the time to do so. The truth is, you have limited time with your loved ones. At some point, you're going to realize that your parents aren't going to be here forever, and that this was their first time as a human being too. People can only meet you as deeply as they've met themselves. And most people, particularly the people in your family and my family, have not gone to therapy. They haven't looked at their issues, and frankly, they don't want to. Let them. Let your parents be less than what you deserve. Let your family life be something that isn't a fairy tale. They're just doing the best they can with the resources and life experiences they have. But now you get to choose what happens moving forward. The fact is, most human beings have never done the work to understand themselves, or heal their past, or manage their own emotions. And if they haven't done that for themselves, they are incapable of doing that for you and showing up in a way that you deserve. Let them. When you recognize that you have a choice in your life, and you let your family be who they are, and you realize your dad's not changing, your mom's not changing, your siblings aren't changing, the only person you can change is you. When you say let them, you see your family exactly as they are, perhaps for the very first time. They're human, and you have no control over what's happened in your family. You have no control over who they are. You can only control what you do from this point forward. When you learn how to let adults be adults and accept people as they are, and then you decide how to make the best of it, I promise you, your family dynamics are going to get better. That's how powerful you are. And then when you say let them, I want you to move to the second part, which is let me. Let me figure out what kind of relationship I want to create. And this is what happened to me when I started to really embrace this.
Okay, I'm going to stop that one there. So that last part where she says, let me, that's where you get to pick. Sorry, let me go back. Oops. Okay, that's where you get to pick what you do moving forward. If you realize a relationship is not a good fit for you, what do you do to move forward? What is it you can do to give yourself the best setup in life, with surrounded by the best people? And that is all up to you. So you have to take the time to think, to look at who you're surrounding yourself with. How are you feeling with those people, and deciding if it is worth your time and energy to have them in your life. I don't know if I mentioned this anywhere else, but I'm going to do another presentation in March on social media, like tech use and social media use and our phone usage. So I'm not even getting into that here, but I bet all of you would agree with me, if you have access to social media, the effect that social media has on your mental health is so significant. And it's in a whole other realm, because you're in relationships with people behind a screen who don't have to have any filters, any kindness, anything. And I'd strongly ask you to think about, how is that relationship going for you? Because social media is destroying a lot of lives, and it's really hard, but a lot of kids become a lot happier when they get off that kind of stuff. So I think it's the end of March that I come back for that, if you're interested in joining me again.
March 28th.
Okay. All right, so let me check the time. Okay, we'll definitely have time. I'm almost done. And then if anybody has questions, or if there's questions in the chat, we can go over that. Okay, so letting people do what they want, when it's hurtful and unkind and selfish, it's not easy. So you have to learn what you're going to do in order to accept that you don't have control over others. So that's kind of the big story there. Oops, sorry. I keep hitting links that are invisible. Okay. So the last thing I want to talk about just really briefly, because this is another thing I've also done on a Friday Focus. This is strengthening your own self-awareness. So let them is very powerful, but it's not easy. And it's definitely not easy if you haven't worked on yourself, like Mel was saying. So working on ourself becomes very, very important. So you want to strengthen that self-awareness muscle that you have for yourself by taking ownership of yourself first, your behaviors, your emotions, how you deal with things. That is always going to be your first go-to because we can only control ourselves. It's the only thing we have 100% control over. So it takes effort and practice to do this, but is so vital. And then this is a link to the Friday Focus that I did on taking responsibility that is all about that. And I think if you feel like you don't know where to start, I would say that's the best place to start, because starting with ourselves and fixing things in ourselves is really all we can do. Okay, so to finish up, this is effective communication. This is the one that I've also already gone over, but I did want to put some of these things up here. And since I figured out how to get to my other screen, I'll show you them in a second. So the slides for the basics of communication is here. Improving empathy skills is there, another really important communication skill. That's the same link to that Brené Brown video. And then on page 12 of the relationship workbook that I have for you guys, there is a whole page on communication styles that you can fill out for yourself. You can make copies, fill it out with your friends or your family or anybody that you want to work on this stuff with. And then that's it. So I want to thank you guys for coming. I really hope that you gained something out of this session. I'm going to share the slides and the resource document in the chat so you can get it right now. And the resource document has the links to everything that you might need. So let me stop sharing.
And then you could stop the recording as well.
Okay, yep.